Since my other video is about censorship, the question is, what do politicians do once they suppress the information that they don't like? Once they suppress the ability of the people to hold them accountable, what is next? And next is the government propaganda, right? It's not just that you're suppressing information and you're preventing people from talking and sharing ideas with each other, is that you also need to tell them what to think. And we know this from history. Like, it's what every authoritarian government has done. It's what the Soviet Union has done. It's what fascist Italy has done. It's what China is doing right now. North Korea, right? Like it's standard. Because the whole purpose is for the government not to be held accountable by the people. And apparently, 4 hours ago, Disclosed TV published this thing, which claims that the Welt shows the opinions of the Corona expert councils were revised in the German chancellery, apparently until they fitted the political agenda. So if you guys remember the time of COVID measures, it was always, it's about the science, right? Like, this is not political, this is the science. But in reality, people weren't against the science, they were against the politicians, like what the politicians were subjecting people to. And here, if this is accurate, it says that the German health minister, Lauterbach, wanted to spread fear among young people with a fear appeal. And this isn't just for Germany. I saw it in the United Kingdom as well. Like, there was a huge campaign trying to fearmonger. And in Romania as well. Like, you would turn the television and it was all about fear. In the United States as well. Like, I would just read the news and it was like COVID cases, COVID deaths. You know, like, everything was about fear. Even on CNN, they had like the death tracker on the right corner of the screen. So, what are the consequences of this? And are they going to be held accountable? And the reality is, like, of course they're not going to be held accountable. I mean, they're the politicians. The whole purpose, the whole essence of what they do is to make sure that they will never be held accountable, even in the eyes of the public. Because, again, censorship, social media, right? So, if we can't hold them accountable, at least we can see what the consequences are. Now, the reason that I picked this particular Reddit post made by no one is because I actually know people like this in real life. Like, I have seen people that I knew, acquaintances, not close friends, but acquaintances, that did get a lot of mental issues from this whole COVID situation, where not only were they supposed to stay indoors and stay safe, but also they were bombarded with the fear propaganda, because you sit in house all day. Like, what do? You watch television, you go on the internet, and you're bombarded by fear. And here you have this lady, which is describing something all too familiar to me, which is really upsetting. I have a she is 31, female, have felt increasingly disconnected from her husband, 35, male. He spends all day on his phone, and 90% of the time he is awake or more. It's to the point where we can't have a normal conversation without him getting wound up and going off on a tangent. Because of the content he consumes, he has become politically radicalized as well as paranoid hypochondriac. He is convinced that everything is a plot for control, profit, or genocide. He also thinks that the entire medical community is either brain damaged or brainwashed, to the point where they ignore people with long COVID and think he will be institutionalized if he seeks medical attention. Currently, he keeps bombarding me with infectious disease stats from around the world and doesn't understand why I'm not engaging with him about it. He thinks that no one is taking COVID seriously enough anymore because we all just want to ignore it and go back to normal. This is from 2024, by the way. Any change in recommendation is just a plot to save the economy while hurting disabled people. Also, bird flu is being intentionally underreported to keep people docile, and the monkeypox is gonna get us. We are not immunocompromised. We have not even been remotely sick since 2022. But he reads COVID wastewater numbers literally every day and tracks every variant relentlessly. He now wants me to wear a fully sealed N95 mask at any time I leave the house. He spends all day in Twitter echo chambers of fear and rage, and I cannot convince him that what people will say online is not reflective of the real world we live in. How do I reach him without making a retreat into further conspiracies? I don't think you can. I genuinely don't. See, the biggest difficulty in treating people that have mental illnesses, and in your case, your husband may be suffering from persecutory paranoia, which is even more difficult to treat than bizarre paranoia. Like, the difference is that in bizarre paranoia, the patient thinks about things that are completely impossible. And they're very convinced of them. They absolutely believe the delusions. Whether it's that they got kidnapped by aliens, or that in the middle of the night ghosts appear in their house. Stuff that's impossible. And that is also difficult to treat, but not as difficult as something that could be plausible in some way, right? Like, maybe, perhaps, in some situation, the government is doing this. And the reason it's difficult is that, number one, he will find other people that believe the same stuff he does. So while leftists will always blame Twitter or the internet, the reality is that if it wasn't for these things, he could just talk on the phone with people, he could correspond via letters. Like these things existed before the internet. And the main issue is that the patient views themselves as 100% healthy and thinks that you are insane for not believing what he is saying. And treatment in this situation is, I can't say difficult, I think it's almost impossible. Because what he is doing is not illegal, so you can't force him to get help. And you need to convince him to get help, but he doesn't think he needs it. He doesn't believe that he is suffering from anything. Even though, as you're mentioning, like, this thing is destroying his life because he is not able to communicate with his wife. He sits inside all day and he's glued to the telephone. So like, all of these behaviors are affecting his well-being, his ability to interact with others and form meaningful connections outside of the paranoia. He doesn't believe that it's a problem. So the only treatment for this situation would be for him to talk with the psychiatrist and have like many sessions where the psychiatrist kind of knows how to approach individuals that are thinking this. But even then it's very difficult because like he would have to attain a level of trust with the psychiatrist. He would have to bond. And it's not like mathematics. Like, it's not a treatment that works for everyone. So yeah, like, the solution would be for him to seek professional help and start these therapy sessions. And it may or may not work. But other than that, no, I don't think that there is a solution for this. And what's worse is that these people can be, quote-unquote, contagious. As ridiculous as that sounds. I mean, he's already asking you to read the statistics and to get involved into his drama. Is asking you to mask up in 2024, right? So, with enough pressure, like, initially you may start being like, okay, well, maybe he's right on this point, and the other, and you may start complying with some of the requests, even if they're unreasonable. You're like, well, at least it shuts him up, right? But with time, you can actually get into his universe. It can actually attract you into this world that's not healthy. Like, even if you were to, like, let's say it's happening, right? Like, let's assume that his paranoia is actually real and you actually do get involved in it. It doesn't change anything. The only thing that changes is your quality of life. So, yeah, I would try to approach him like this, I guess. Like try to show him how different his lifestyle is now based on what it used to be, and if it makes him happy. And then say, well, okay, but like, even if you say everything is true, then what's the point in living life this way? Like, for how long do we have to wear masks? For how long do we have to behave in a way? Like, why not just risk it? Like, you would have to approach it from that angle, I suppose. Contradicting them is usually not a good idea. They get very defensive, aggressive. They may even think that you're part of the conspiracy if you do this. Yeah, it's a really bad situation, and I wouldn't advise you leaving him. There's a lot of people on Reddit that are like, oh, well, you should leave him, It's like, well, he's a victim, number one, of the policies that we talked about earlier, and politicians that won't be held accountable for what they did. And number two, if you leave them, it gets worse. Like, they may get even more absorbed into their little universe, to the point where they can't function, they can't go to work, they can't make money, which means that they can't pay rent. So yeah, it's really bad, what you're describing here, and very concerning. And again, it's upsetting because I know other similar cases from my life. And some of them have recovered over time. Like, this is the good news. This level of anxiety and this paranoia can be fleeting. Because at some point, even the patient realizes that while he thinks he is right, and he thinks he has discovered the grand conspiracy and the truth, he also realizes that it's affecting his quality of life, and he can't go on like that. And eventually, you know, they slowly change by finding other hobbies and other activities. But the unfortunate part is that some don't. So yeah, this is horrible. You know, the entire situation affected me so much that I decided to make a video about it. Let me know what you guys think, and as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.